the sikkum, which I sent you, but meanwhile we have pass me please the chart that I made. Is it good? Okay, let's look at the chart, which is a summary of the Maimer. It doesn't have everything. So the right-hand column first, we're just going to go down the right-hand column because these are the three levels. Now, I've written some things here which don't say in the Maimer, but it seems that this is correct. The top of the page, first of all, because the Maimer is explaining the word. V'chasidecha yivarchucha, yiduch Hashem kol ma'asecha, all your works will praise you. V'chasidecha yivarchucha, and your pious ones will bless you. The Maimer is explaining that yivarchucha is yivarchu koi. That's the amshocha, in a way of bracha, as opposed to tefillah, where koi in malchus, which means creation. And what level are we talking about? Continuing at the top of the page, higher than the whole system of creation. That's why it's yoducha in brackets, a level that cannot be defined or described, but only acknowledged. In that sense, then there's a little arrow that points you above the line. In that sense, it's the mailas of tefillah, because tefillah is yehir rotzen, and you will, and can change a decision that's already implemented and carried out and decided in Seder Shtaushalos. That's the maila of this inyan, because we're talking about yeducha. Now, normally, a bracha can only unlock that which has been determined by Shtaushalos, not hide in Shtaushalos. But this is the maila of both. It's a bracha, it's certain, it's being nimshach. More detail about that in the as we go through the Maimer, and what level is being drawn higher than Ishtaushalos. As it goes into Ba'ifan Shel Bracha, in a way of Bracha, and then the arrow points to Al Derech, similar to a Mailas HaTorah Al Tefillah, the Mail of Torah over Tefillah, which the Maimer will explain in detail. Torah Paskins, that's the lowest level, and things change. And that happens al yidei chasidecha. How is all this happening through chasidecha? And there's a star there, and the bottom explains what's chasidecha. So we'll look at it now. The definition of chasid is bittul, number one. So it said they built chassidim to the bittul of the yid. Where do we see that the union of bittul is the definition of chasid? Because of the Zohar, Izer chasid in brackets, hamis chasid, missing a ches there. Hamis chasid im koinoi, who deals kindly with his master, so it's not about him, it's about the master. And that the Maimer says, it's all based on the Barashab, is responsible for Amshachas Pnimius Atik, because that bittul, the person goes beyond self, so this elicits a level of Likus beyond the Ishtalshalus, Pnimius Atik, the highest level, essential level. But it's not enough only through the bittul, putting self aside, it's got to be through the avodah, the personal transformation. And what does avodah means? What's a chassid there, Barashab? It's a big chiddush, that koiches, and it's a big level. Koiches tivim, nasim, koiches elikim. That, right, the last line of the page we're looking at now, that his whole identity, as he views himself, is merely a reflection of the divine. All of his faculties are expressions of the Svidas Milamaila. That's transformative, not bittul. It's the opposite of bittul in the sense that it's not transcendence, but it's absolute engagement, so that every aspect of his being is a reflection of the divine. So that's critical for the effect of Amshachas Atik, which is the next words on the line, the last words on the page, Nasa Evech Elamim, that causes the transformation of the nations of the world, that's all Mashiach. So now, looking at the chart itself, starting at the right-hand side, we're going to go down that first and then go horizontal. So now first vertical. So the highest darga we're speaking of is Ein Sof, as it's invested in Reisha de la Yisiada. That's the Gimel Reisha of Keser. There's three. There was a whole diak explaining the Zohar, as explained by the Rebbe Rashab. Two quotations of the Zohar. There was a whole harichas in the Maimer, entire us unto itself. So the Gimel Reisha he refers to there in Keser and the three heads, Radla and Chachmas Timah and Atik. So the Ein Sof is invested, without going to the Riches again now, and the Diyukim, but the Ein Sof is invested in the highest level of Keser Radla, and that the summation of that's Pnimius Atik. And that is the Darga of Ata. That's Mizdike Darga, Atmos. Then there's a level of Chitzonius Atik, still Atik, but Chitzonius Atik, and that's the level of who? And then, it doesn't say this in the Maimer, but it comes out that Rabbi is a level of Arich. That's a low level of Keser altogether. But still, B'chlol is in Keser. Okay. Now let's go horizontally. So, as a result of the revelation of Pnimius Atik of Etzem, so that affects Shleimus Habira. That's the emes part of בשלום Nafshi, the true refined elevation of the world. And the reach is much greater than the other revelations can reach, as will be seen. Actually, we'll contrast. We'll go vertical, contrasting each level as we proceed. So we're now at the second column, right-hand side. So as a consequence of the revelation of Pnimius Atik, that's the Shleimus Habirud, the Afila Nitzuta Shenechshechu, even those sparks that have become darkened, become transformed. That's the Chaticha Atzma Nas and the Vela, as we explained in Halacha, or even a kosher piece of meat is considered in the Vela when calculating the ratio of 61, as we explained. But even that, so it's kosher, but it becomes nevela. Even this is elevated. And the big chiddush in the Maimer is ubanifel atzmai, not under the spark that's in the world, sparks that have darkened. In other words, gimel klippas atzmeyas, not just klippas noiga. The chiddush is the nifel atzmai. That's really should be underlined. That the very consequence, the very creation itself, is a reflection of godliness. That is. As a result of the last line of the page, the avodah of the Jew, of the Chassid, that koiches tivim nasa koiches elikim, that affects the nifal, that's the epech amim, that's the nifal atzmai, that the world itself, not that there's godliness within me, but my whole identity is godliness. In my detail, that's the big chiddush of the Maimer. It's in the nifal atzmai. Now, in contrast to time of Shlomo Melech, which we'll see, where there was also menucha and the level of shalom, but since then was chitzonius atik, next box below, going now vertical below, second column, second box. So there was taka birba derech menucha. Shlomo Melech didn't have to engage the world, and no armies, even as a show of strength. And they came to him. And therefore, Kum Hashem limnu chasecha, he said, rise, O God, this is the Beis Hamikdash, to your resting place, because this was a period of menucha. However, the limitation was that who did he attract? Those that were seeking God. So you're seeking godliness. You are naturally drawn to Shlomo Melech, but that's not the sparks that have been darkened that there's not even a search or a longing or a thirst anymore. When the revelation is of Arich, Havaya, which is Oir, Atom explained is the Etzem. Who is the Etzem Ha'oir? And Havaya is classic Oir, revelation. So then, it's also a tremendous elevation of the world, but Birra, Bakapadim, Ksasis, Lapshus. There's got to be some engagement. The time of Moishe Rabbeinu, the ark had to travel in the Midbar. And hence, Kum Hashem v'yafutzu yivecha. The enemy is scattered, but he still exists. He's subdued, but exists. Next column. So in Amshachas, Pnimius Atik, the Amshachas all the way down, but Malchus de Malchus, which means all the way down into creation at its lowest levels. When the Amshacha, the drawing down is from Chitzonius Atik, the Amshacha is Taki in Malchus, but Ashayechas Lezah, but Malchus as is still connected to the higher world, still not separated through the greatest tzimtzumim, and invested, the word of God invested in creation and even in concealed creation. And the third level, Arich, so that's the I could write over that, that's the result of the tzimtzum, and then the oyev nichna v'miskayim, so the enemy is subdued, but it still exists.
Is that still in Atzilus, or
no,
is that already in Bria?
This basically is classic Ishtalshalus. We're talking about the world and the effect of Malchus, the effect of Alikus on the world, but it's so screened and so concealed that the effect on the world is like Moishe Rabbeinu, Kum Hashem b'yafutzu yivecha. The enemy is why? What's missing is the Pnimius of Alikus, which Bechlolus is Atik, whether Chitzonius Atik or Pnimius Atik, because it's an external revelation that's being drawn down from Keser, it's Arich, and it's drawn down into the world. But it's the whole Hamshacha is through profound tzimtzum. The first two levels, the tzimtzum doesn't affect. It's a direct Hamshacha, especially the highest level. In Malchus, the Malchus, what is drawn? Oirin Sof Sheberat Lo, without being affected by the tzimtzum. The Maimon doesn't give us a lot of a detail, actually any detail on that, but that's the clear what comes out. So when are these periods? So now the next horizontal column. So the Oirin Sof, Pnimius Atik is Lasid Lavoi. That's when Mashiach comes, Shleimus and Hashalom. That's the true part of Bashalom Nafshi. When in history, when was the level of Chitzonius Atik revealed? We're talking Atik, but Chitzonius Atik, the level of who? That's like the Etzem Ha'oir. It's the Etzem, but it's still revelation. That's B'mei Shloim, that's the Beis HaMikdash. And B'mei Moishe, the next column, that was in the Mishkan, that was Hamshacha. We're talking of Kesed, it's all Moedidika revelations of Arich, of Havaya, of Oir, it's its highest level. But nonetheless, since it's Oir and Oir altogether means otherness, so otherness remains subdued, but still remains. It's only when there's an Atzmisdika property that you have a birul like Shleima and pure Atzmisdika Giloi, Lasid Lavai. Because only in the face of Atzmos, there's nothing but him. And so there's the two levels, Kavayachal, within that. Mamash Giloi Atzmos, that everything is elevated, even the darkest sparks, and then nothing but him, but that itself is in some way of revelation to otherness. That's the level of who. So there's Taka Birun, there's no Milchama, but it only affects the world that's responsive. Now these levels, that's the unit of Chasidecha, so explain the next column. That Chesed is Maramas on the Etzem, because Chesed is even to Ashirim. Because what's Ashirim, what's richness, what's wealth? Wealth is beyond what's needed, that's beyond the Ishtalshalus, that's Sev of Kol Almin. And then the Tzedakah, below that, Tzedakah is a Giloy that completes the lack. That restores to Malchus, the Hipatzufim, the five faces, explains to the five Giluyim, the five Tziyudim that Malchus lacks as a result of the Tzimtzum. So, this third level we're talking here about is that, again, Moishe Rabbeinu and the of Tzedakah, we're talking about revelation. We're talking about revelation, but the revelation basically means that the world knows that there is a God. That truth is not lost. And when this revelation happens, that knowledge affects the will to be subdued and be in awe, but still completely outside of godliness, just subdued. So what does that do? What does this mean? That even though there's a tzimtzum, and it causes Malchus to have all these lacks, so this Hamshacha restores Malchus to its pure state of connection to that which is above it, Atzilus and all of the Partzufim. But it doesn't extend all the way down to transformation in the world. And Malchus is not transformed either. It's the Tzimtzum is fixed, but not beyond that. In other words, kind of like it's going back. It's going back to Gan Eden in a way. The clip is there, but kept at bay. It's separate. Everything's fine. The enemies are scattered. It's a peaceful world. It's a tikkun achet. We're talking here, Adech is being nimshach. We're talking the Mishkan and B'Shloim, B'mei Moishe Rabbeinu. But that the world is transformed? No. None of it. There's a peace here. There's quiet. Okay, the Jew lives in peace, and the world allows him his space. The world is afraid to start up. The world's afraid of the Jew. But that's not the tachlis. The tachlis is the epoch el amim, the transformation of the nations of the world. So that was not affected by Moishe Rabbeinu on that stage. Shlomo Melech to some degree, and Lasadove completely. The next column. So the etzem, that's where Yid is rooted. Yechida, the Yechida of the Neshama. That's the etzem, that's the premius. And in Torah itself, it's Chassidus. Chassidus is the Yechida of Torah. Kabbalah is the Chaya of Torah. Kabbalah corresponds to Atzilus. The four levels of Neshama correspond to the four elements. But Chassidus is not Atzilus. Chassidus is a Gilui HaEtzem, which is Yechida Sheba Neshama, which is revealed when Mashiach comes, and before that through Chassidus Chabad. Although there were glimpses of it, as he says in Rabbi, it was not Tchilas and B'Seif, and Seif Mitchilas, and Rabbi began the whole line of Gili, Pnimis HaTorah. So by him was that Inyan also, as we're going to see in the next column. So what level of Torah? This column deals with levels of Torah. So the first level is the Yechid of Torah Chassidus. That is Pnimis Atik, Chitzerius Atik, which is Elikos, the level of who? That's Torah Sanis, that's Machal Kabbalah. And Arech, Havaya, which is Giloi, Oed, that's Nigla. And hence we find the final column, this accords with and answers some of the questions at the beginning of the Maimer. We didn't go into the whole beautiful arichas of the Sichas, except for this last part, being to that a little bit. Kol ha'isik b'Torah. One of the shalos was why Kol ha'isik b'Torah, why the emphasis on the person doing it, not the actual virtues of Torah, and because it has to be the Rashbi, it has to be the Inyan of Yechida that's revealed. That's the Neshama, Yid. So this Darg is the Rashbi. His Torah was different than the other Torahs. The other tzaddikim also did through Torah, but they had to command, they had to engage the world. He just said a Torah and the rain fell. And that's like similarly the Alter Rebbe revealed in those stories, this Kislev, his own Yechida, but in so doing reveals the Yechid in Torah and in every Yid, Chidish b'nefesh. That's why the emphasis is oisik mitzchas sodim mispalel matzibur. Again, as we pointed out, this all points to the Rebbe's Chiddush B'chlal in Chassidus is that everything is a result of the Gili HaNeshama. And the whole purpose is Gili HaNeshama. The purpose is not the world, the purpose is not Torah mitzvahs. Dir b'tachtonim, it doesn't mean the purpose is the world either. The purpose is Neshamas Yisrael, but the shleimus of Neshamas Yisrael, the dir b'tachtonim, that Neshama should come down as a nivra in a guf and reveal its yichid etzem Neshama. How does it do that? By transforming the world through Torah. They're all means to Torah mitzvahs. And the final means is Chassidus, which is expression of yichid of Torah, which that's where the Neshama expresses its deepest self. Whereas Pinchas ben Yair, which was also transformed the world through Torah, he had to command the river to split. It's not the Etzer. And then the story conveys that. There's a river and you're not complying, you got to open up. The Rashbi, there's no rain. He didn't say rain, there should be rain. He spoke Torah and rain came. Because and when that truth is revealed, then the world itself participates. The bottom, I write, al dei tefillah, it's true in general, but since, upon reflection, the Maamar doesn't say anything about this, but since upon reflection, that's all talking about three dargis in Torah, and Moishe Rabbeinu also, that's the Torah, it's Kum Hashem Ve'ifut Zeivecha, he's talking about the Aron. So it's not so much tefillah, but a third level in Torah. What is that? Maamar doesn't say, but B'chlal Chassidus it says that Torah affects a bir in the world. When anybody, any Jew, paskins and learns something, and paskins halach in Torah, it affects the world. So that's that level in Torah. Even though that's a stupendous level, because in Bezdin paskins, then in Psulei HaChayzros, right, that if she's a girl over the age of under the age of 3, her virginity will return, she'll heal, but over 3 it doesn't. So in the case where something happened and she was 3 years old already, but then Bezdin decided to make it a leap year, and then she's a psuluk, she can marry a kohen. She's not 3 anymore, she's still 2. That's a stupendous miracle. L'chayra belongs with Rashbi, but that's the example that's brought. Well, yesh lechalik, that's a psak din in Torah. He didn't give a psak din, he just spoke Torah. But this is a ruling in Torah that has been empowered to every bezdin lamata to do. So that's the lowest level, but on the other hand, there's an element of it. It's really extraordinary level. But Mami doesn't address it, so I'm not going to say a pilpul on that. But l'chayra, that's what that means. It's still talking the world of Torah. All right, it's a lot of detail missing, but it's just helpful. When you learn this is meant as an aid. When you learn the Maamar, and it's another thing. So where does this belong, and how does it fit? This, that's the idea of this, is to keep it all together, to help you organize it in your mind, and to gel it all together. Okay, it's a few days before it is Kislev. Today's already what? Yud Zayin Kislev. No, Tes Zayin.
Tesvav.
Tesvav. Tesvav. I'm sorry. Yudala Kislev was yesterday. Tesvav Kislev. I'm going to post. You should. I said this to one of my children yesterday, so I'll send it to you. To just tell you how the history. When I was a bacher, this was stolen from me. Literally, I had a whole box of stuff. Chassidische Gneva, Chassidische theft taken. Amongst the things that were taken, I had a tape. I don't know who made it. It was made in the 70s. And someone, they went through like all of the blankets they could, and they took out excerpts. Each one of them is an unbelievable excerpt. And there's one excerpt there. I just do exquisite things. There's one excerpt from Yud Shvat, Tavshin Yud Daled, The Rebbe talks about yesterday's parsha of Yaakov and Esav meeting up, and Yaakov tells him, Esav says, let's go together, and he's ready to reconcile. He was touched deeply for a moment, and Yaakov realizes there's a lot of work to be done. He tells him, you're going ahead. The children are small and the flocks are young, and if I push them, they will expire. I can't keep up with your pace. You go ahead, and I will meet you. And Rashi says, when will he never met him? When will he meet him? And Mashiach comes. So, from then till now, I've been all avoided to fix Esav and fix Yishmael. So the Rebbe there addresses that inyan and talks about the tzaddikim along the way, that you can't speak, that they're already ready for Mashiach. But because we're the children, that's us and the flocks, are not, and to push us will cause, just to expire, and the souls will expire, but that's not the avodah. So they stay in Golus, and even more so, remain buried in Golus. This book of Moishe Rabbeinu did not go into Eretz Yisrael because he would not leave in the end his flock that died in the Midbar. And so the tzaddikim, he spoke about the Vidyavi, he couldn't speak, chooses to remain in Golus with Yidden. But there's Meredika words there about a Rebbe and connecting a Yid to Etzem HaNeshama and Atzmas Ein Sof. And the Rebbe can't speak. It's extremely emotional to use just a word that we would use to describe this. So I'm going to post it. I'll post the Titus Menachem. They made, they wrote it up completely, they redid it, like they do everything. But you'll have the gist of it and you'll hear it. Something very special. Okay.